Hi, and welcome back to the Hangar with Xcraft. In episode 2 of our Hasegawa P47 build, we're going to get wings built, and we're going to get the engine constructed and get that installed on the fuselage. For the most part, when we're done with this segment, this is going to look like an airplane. So we're going to get into that right now. Okay, so just a quick word about any of the prep work I've done here. First of all, we have our fuselage ready to go from our last segment. Half of our engine is completed. We've got the other half, the crankcase parts here. And we have, I already removed the wings, the wing tops, and the landing gear bay parts from the trees and prepped them, got rid of the flashing. So no point in you watching me do that. Okay, so first thing we're going to do here is this landing gear bay gets this guy installed right here. This is just the inside edge. And this is the back side where it won't be seen. We'll get a little glue on it there. Boom. And same thing for this side. These are keyed also. There's notches here. There's notches on the end. So you cannot install these incorrectly. I suppose you could install it backwards. You could in fact install it backwards. So the inside is on the outside. So you're gonna have to be mindful of that. Let's double check. Yep, I did that one okay. So this is the detailed side. So that side goes in. So it's on the inside of the bay. Okay. I mean, that is not a big deal. It's just something to be aware of if you're not familiar with this stuff, if you're a newbie to the hobby. Okay. And now these guys just get glued on. You can see I already painted this part of the bay. So this side is going to get glued on right here. So it's going to look like that. Got our hole down there for the gear door strut. And this is, yep, there's a line, or there's a raised section of the wing on the inside here that this gear bay lines up with. So you want to make sure that's on the outside of the gear bay, not the inside. For one, it'll be visible on the inside, and if you do it wrong, then your gear bay is going to be out of position. And what problems that might cause, I'm not sure, but we're not going to find out. There was a little gap here, so I put a little glue in there, and we're going to get that work together. So again, I just put bonder in there, and then just work the wing. You've seen me do this before in other videos, but for anyone who hasn't seen that, that's all we're doing. We're just working that back and forth to melt the plastic and fill that gap. We'll do the exact same thing on this side. And same thing. And same thing with that gap on this one too. So we'll push that together. You can probably see that gap there. I can open it up so you can see it. And then we'll push that together. We'll work it and work it and work it. Get that glued together nice. Might take a minute here to get it. You can see I did not clean the paint off. I always paint when I do this kind of stuff. I always paint like the inside and the outside of this landing gear bay. Now, is that really necessary? No, because you're not going to see the inside of this wing. However, I prefer to do that just in case there happens to be a spot somewheres where you might be able to spot something. So I tend to paint the whole thing like I did with these. It would be really rare to be able to see that, but I do it anyway. Okay, so those have come together pretty good. So we're all set there. Now we can do our wing tops. Hit the alignment pins there. So this is going to go really fast. I was going to switch to a time lapse on this, but it's pretty quick, so I don't know if I'll bother. Something I wanted to point out in my videos here is that, yeah, I know my videos are crude compared to a lot of other videos. Let's use some build reviews as an example. Well, they're all polished and clean and super professional looking and yada yada yada. Well, I'm going to be honest with you here that I am making an attempt at making what I do more real than fake and polished, because nobody builds a model in 15 minutes. You'll see these videos on YouTube and they're like full build of the, the Academy TBM Avenger or whatever it may be. And it's just like little bits and pieces. And so you don't see the whole build. In my opinion, that's not even close to what I would consider to be a full build. Or a full build video, I should say. I'm not bashing anybody. Everybody has their own style. And to be quite frank with you, those videos have way more views than mine do. But I'm not necessarily here for views. Sure, views are great. I really want that. However, my ultimate goal here is to be able to show people stuff. Especially those that are new to this. Because those videos don't show you the ins and outs of doing this. Like with that, like when I'm gluing that landing gear bay in and I'm working that plastic back and forth to close that gap. You don't see that in those spit and polished build videos. Alright, so just like that, we already have a wing section. A completed wing section to go with our fuselage. Pardon me. And that, we're going to see how good this fits. Okay, so this joint looks really good. This one is a little gappy. Pardon me. Wow. It's a little gappy. You can see it right here. And potentially maybe I can get that filled using our glue, our bonder, and using our little technique for getting that to come together. The wing joints look like they're going to come together quite nicely. We're going to have to pull up on the wings and probably do this, rock them around to get those to seal up. But we will get it. So our wing is in place, dry fitted, and I'm just going to lay some glue on here now. I call this glue, but it's really more of a bonder, because it's not a glue. It melts the plastic. It doesn't glue the plastic together, it melts the plastic together. Now look at this seam. If you can see that, look how rough that looks. That is some of the plastic that's squeezed, pardon me, wow, that's squeezed out from the bonder. We're going to have to sand that down and smooth it off, but do not, you must resist the temptation to wipe that off, because you'll make a big mess out of that joint doing that. So don't wipe it off. Now we got to do this trailing edge. This trailing edge now is not lined up the greatest. So we're going to get some bonder in there, and we're going to get this in position. Toot sweet here. Okay. And can we get that to pull together? Yep. We sure can. We sure can. Great. This gap is filled. Now, just like the one up front, it's a little rough. It's a little bit rough. Push it over a little bit. It's wanting to go a little crooked on us. There might be, this is an older kit that was found at a garage sale, and who knows what its history was before it was found. So there could have a little bit of warpage going on here of some kind that's causing us an issue with the wing seating back here. It's wanting to cock this way. So I'm going to have to hold that in position until it sets enough to hold itself. And up here, we're going to have to redo that gap a little bit, because it opened back up on us, messing around with the aft, or the trailing edge of the wing. Yep. That seam is going to need some dressing out. For sure. It's possible we might need a little bit of filler in there, but we might be okay too. Okay, so our gaps are filled. But it wants to keep pushing back. Alright, we're going to have to hold this. Okay, I think I'm going to cut away here until I have this set. I'm going to have to let this set enough to where it'll stay while I work these wing joints here. So we're going to cut away, and I'll be back when we're ready to do that. Okay, so these joints are set up enough. We can now play with these joints up front here, or on the top rather. Okay, so this one comes together quite well on its own with very little manipulation. So we're going to start with this side. Just working to get in our glue in there just like we did with the others. And, you know, again, some squeezed out there. That's okay. We're not going to worry about that. You know, this cockpit, for just a very, very basic cockpit, really came out quite nicely. And the seat belts really help. Just that little added feature. It wouldn't look right without any seat belts. That's for sure. Alright, now this side looks like it's going to be a little bit more challenging. This trailing edge right here, right back where the flap is. That spot. Little bit wider gap there. So we got to work that particular spot just a little bit more. All right, that's closed up. This is closed up. We just got to let this set a minute. That melted plastic will start to firm up a little, and then when I release pressure on it, it'll stretch rather than separate. We're almost there. I just see two tiny specks. Now, if I were to throw more adhesive or more bonder in there, and sometimes I will do that if I'm having too much troubles getting that together, but in this particular case, if I threw more bonder in there, it's going to undo what I did there, because it's going to melt that thin layer of plastic that I have spanning that joint. There's two very, very fine, like almost like pinholes there. And since most of this model is going to be bare aluminum, we need to make sure that everything is dressed out as cleanly as possible. Now, what I haven't decided is if the wing tops will be painted silver like they did with the Mustangs, and I think that answer is yes. But the fuselage will remain bare aluminum. We'll see. I'll have to do just a little bit of research on that. See if I can find any photos of this aircraft. I found one photo of this airplane, but it's from the side, so you can't see the tops of the wings. But I'm going to believe that they were painted. Otherwise, you'd have the same problems they have with the P-51s, where you're flying along and you look out the side of the wing here, you got sun beating down in here, and you're going to glare right in your eye if this is bare aluminum. It's going to be way too shiny. Now, maybe we don't. Maybe we use all clad aluminum on here, and use some different shades of all clad for the different panels, and it would be dulled down a little bit, so you wouldn't get that shine. So maybe it'll have kind of the appearance of painted. My goal is to make it look like some of these panels have been replaced from other aircraft. I do that quite often because I think it adds a very realistic level of realism. Okay, so there we go. Now we can go ahead and install the tail surfaces. These were already off the trees in the box, but they look clean. It doesn't look like they were damaged when they came off. So we'll just clean up what very little flashing is here. Little piece. right there. I catch my nail on it there. That does not take much. That is the only flashing I see on this piece. Now, since these are removed already from the trees, we need to determine which side is which side. Okay, so the way we're going to do that, see these locating tabs? They're different sizes. So that's going to give us our clue right there. This one has to go on this side. It has no choice. We could put it on this side. It would fit, technically. But this one isn't going over here. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get our bonder in here. Go ahead and hit this other side real quick. That way we can make sure we have good straight 90-degree angles with the vertical fin. I like to do the horizontal stabilizers after I have the wings on, not before, because then you can eye down the back from the tail of the fuselage forward like this. You can eye down there and see if your tail is square with the wings. And that looks, I think I got to bring this side down just a hair. That looks pretty darn good. Okay? Look at that. Looks like an airplane already. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do here, we're going to get this crankcase assembled. And get the engine attached to the fuselage. Okay, so there's this little rubber piece. This is a little bushing that they give you. They usually give these on a tree of 4, and you only use 1. So you end up with a whole scat of them left over time, which is nice because then if you lose one, you've got other spares to fall back on. And boy, do I have a few spares of these. Okay. So that goes down in there, like that. And we're going to install that. So there we go. There's our crankcase. Drop it, break it. We'll throw a little bonder on here. And that is done. Now that little bushing we put in there is what the propeller will push into, and that bushing will retain it nice and snug, but it'll allow us to be able to remove it also when we want to transport this thing to a show. Alright, so there's 2 pins on the back, and you can see here these holes are 2 different sizes, so you cannot mess this up. It will only go one way unless you decide intentionally that it's going to go some other way. Now, there'll be plenty of people out there that'll tell you that you had to remove that paint before you can use that bonder. Well, I'm showing you right here. You don't have to do that. Look. I mean, this is stuck already. And I submit the paint itself actually acts as a bonder. I know the bonder melts it, and then it all sticks together. I've never had an issue with having to remove paint from a surface before bonding. And that's going to be our engine. Okay, so what we're going to do, I guess I can get in there pretty well. Okay. There's our engine and crankcase installed. Okay. And then we got a cowl. This cowl has a unusual amount of flashing on it, I would say. Now, this is being a 90s kit. Not really surprising, but for nowadays it is very surprising. See, you can see all this flashing here and here. So we're going to very carefully shave that off. It is right on a panel line. So you want to be very careful with that. Now this is interesting. The way this has been molded, this panel actually sets lower than the ring around the cowl. I mean, like, if I didn't know any better, this looks like a separate piece that has not been glued in properly. This is odd. I don't know if that's a kit problem, or if it's, or I don't know if it's a design problem, or if that is just an issue with this particular kit. But look at this. So I can run my knife, boom, and I'm right flush up against that cowl on this side of that paneling. And this side, it'll slide right over. This side, no way. It's fine here, and all of a sudden it just drops off and sets it deeper and deeper. This is definitely an issue. We're going to have to use some putty on that probably and rescribe that line. So based on that, yeah, I think we will go ahead and install this cowl. There's this lower section here that has to mount inside that cowl. Let's clean that up just a hair. Won't take much. Okay, and now this is going to go in like this. Oh, okay. I see. On this particular one, there's this track and this track, we'll call them. And there's a groove and a groove. And that's going to slide right in there just like that. That's nice. That's nice. Very, very easy alignment. No guessing. Perfect. Just like that. You know what? I'm not going to glue this cowl on yet. We're going to need to paint in here first when we do the aluminum before we install this cowl. We'll probably want to spray the cowl, the inside of the cowl, get it glued on here, and then we can do the aluminum everywhere else. Because we got to get way down in here, way deep down in there. And it's going to be really hard to mask off them cylinders. So, we're going to leave this off. Okay, so this for tonight is our project. Looks like an airplane already. We're really not far already from starting paint work. This model builds very quickly. Very quickly. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, I submit this is a really good beginner level kit. Way more so than, let's use Revell kits as an example. So I have some Revells, and this happens to be a Corsair, but this is what I'm talking about, are these really basic Revell kits. And a lot of people might think this is a good beginner kit, but I'm going to suggest that it's not. It's got a good entry-level price. If you've never done this and you don't know what you're getting yourself in for and you want to try it, it's a great entry-level price. However, I submit that kits like this could likely discourage a lot of modelers from continuing on because of the difficulty of making something like this one look good with the issues with these cheap kits versus spending a little bit more extra money on something like this that is way easier to build and goes together a lot better, has nice detail, but is still a relatively fast, easy build. I tend to use the Revell kits as mules. And a mule is something like I want to practice a painting technique or something. And I don't want to do it on something that's good. So I'll use a mule. You practice your painting techniques on something like that rather than your good stuff. Figure it out first. And then do it on your actual project. So there we go for tonight. The Hasegawa P47D-25 in 1/48 scale. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe as usual. Hit that notifications button at the bottom. I have all the dressing out on these seams to do on this yet, and I likely will not bore you with that in a video. So, but again, like and subscribe, hit that notifications button, and please don't forget to keep your fingers out of the glue.